Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Retrography, your friendly neighborhood chrononaut, here to dig through the pixelated ruins of yesteryear, and boy oh boy, have I got a steaming pile of, a glorious treasure chest for you today. We're talking about a time when cartoons weren't afraid to be weird, to be epic, to be cartoons, damn it. Not just thinly veiled toy commercials, though, let's be honest, some of those were awesome too, but that's a rant for another day. Today, we're diving into a treasure trove of nostalgia so potent, it might just spontaneously generate a fanny pack and a pair of Zubaz pants on your person. We're excavating the lost relics, the unsung heroes, the animated masterpieces that flickered across our CRT screens and then vanished like a fart in the wind, or worse, got replaced by something with personality than a beige wall. I'm talking about shows that had brains, brawn, and an unhealthy obsession with catchphrases. So, buckle up your pogs, rewind your VHS tapes, metaphorically of course, unless you're committed, because things are about to get retrospectively righteous. Get ready for the top 10 forgotten 90s cartoons that deserve a comeback. And I don't mean some soulless, focus group tested, how do you do fellow kids? Reboot. I mean a comeback, with the original spirit intact. Let's do this! Alright, let's kick this list off with a show that wasn't just a cartoon, it was an animated epic poem carved from stone and angst. I'm talking of course about Disney's. Seriously, how did this show even get made by Disney in the 90s? It was dark, it was brooding, it had Shakespearean undertones, complex character arcs, and villains that weren't just cackling morons. This wasn't your typical afternoon fluff, this was appointment television, people. You rushed home, threw your backpack in the corner, and prayed you didn't miss the magnificent opening theme. Chills, literal chills. Remember Goliath? The stoic leader with a voice deeper than the Mariana Trench and a vocabulary that would make your English teacher weep with joy? And the rest of the clan, Brooklyn, Broadway, Lexington, Hudson, and the ever-lovable Bronx? Each one had a distinct personality, their own struggles, their own reasons for being utterly awesome. They weren't just the red one or the funny one, they were fully fleshed out characters trying to navigate a world that both feared and needed them. It was like X-Men, but with more gothic architecture and less spandex. Though Elisa Maz's jacket was pretty cool, not gonna lie. And the themes, my god, the themes, we're talking betrayal, prejudice, sacrifice, redemption, environmentalism, gun control. I'm not kidding, they went there. This show treated its audience like they had actual brains, unlike some shows that thought the pinnacle of humor was a pie to the face. Explored mythology, history, and even legend, weaving it all into a cohesive narrative that spanned centuries. It was ambitious, it was daring, and it was utterly captivating. You felt the weight of their stone sleep, the tragedy of their displacement, and the burning desire for acceptance. The villains too. Xanados? Oh, come on, one of the greatest animated villains of all time. Suave, intelligent, always 10 steps ahead, and voiced by the legendary Jonathan Frakes. His motivations weren't just, mwahaha, I'm evil. He was complex, sometimes even a reluctant ally. And Demona? Talk about a tragic villain. Her descent into hatred and bitterness was heartbreaking, making her a far more compelling antagonist than your average Saturday morning baddie. These weren't just obstacles, they were reflections of the hero's own struggles and the world's cruelty. Why does it need a comeback? Are you serious? In an age of gritty reboots and complex storytelling and animation, would fit right in. Imagine the stories they could tell now with modern animation techniques, but the same dedication to character and plot. We were left with so many unanswered questions, so many potential arcs. What happened to the other gargoyle clans around the world? How would Goliath and Elisa's relationship continue to evolve? The possibilities are endless. Disney Plus, you're sitting on a gold mine here, a gothic, winged, brooding gold mine. So yeah, it wasn't just good for a 90s cartoon, it was good, period. It set a standard for mature storytelling and animation that few have dared to reach since. To let it remain a relic of the past is a crime against animation itself. We were robbed, I tell you, robbed of more stone-faced awesomeness. Bring them back, let them watch over our city skylines once more, and for the love of all that is holy, give Keith David more lines to read. The world needs it. Next up, we have a show that was so meta, so bizarre, so utterly unhinged, it makes look like a chartered accountant's tea party. I'm talking about the one, the only, Hooga Chaga, Hooga Chaga. This wasn't just a superhero parody, it was a Looney Tune mainlining espresso while reading a doctoral thesis on chaos theory, then deciding, yeah, I can make a show out of this. And somehow, Spielberg's name was attached to it. The 90s were a wild time, man. Dexter Douglas, a mild-mannered computer nerd, gets sucked into the internet, back when that was a mystical, terrifying place full of dial-up noises and a distinct lack of cat videos, and emerges as Freakazoid, a being of pure, unadulterated ID, with the attention span of a gnat on a sugar rush and powers that were, shall we say, one minute he's super strong, the next he's having a calm, rational discussion with a man in a fez about the proper way to butter toast. You never knew what you were going to get, and that was the sheer, unadulterated genius of it. The humor was a machine gun of pop culture references, non-sequiturs, fourth wall breaks, and gags so stupid they looped all the way back around to being brilliant. Characters would address the narrator, complain about the script, or just stop the show to do something completely random. Remember Lord Bravery, the superhero who was terrified of, well, everything brave? Or the Lobe with his giant exposed brain who was somehow less intelligent than half the inanimate objects in the show? It was a masterclass in controlled chaos, a symphony of silliness, and the supporting cast. Oh my god, the supporting cast. Police Sergeant Cosgrove, who would interrupt any perilous situation by calmly saying, "Hey, Freakazoid, wanna go get a mint?" And Freakazoid would always say yes, because priorities. Or Fanboy, the walking, talking embodiment of every annoying convention-goer you've ever met, before that was even a widespread stereotype. This show was prescient, it knew. It saw the future of internet comment sections and cringed alongside us, but with way more style. Why does it need a comeback? Because our current world is for Freakazoid's brand of lunacy. Imagine him trying to navigate social media, TikTok trends, or the 24-hour news cycle. His brain would probably melt, reform as a tap-dancing badger, and then demand a raspberry beret. The sheer comedic potential is staggering. We need that anarchic energy, that willingness to poke fun at, including itself. In a world that often takes itself far too seriously, Freakazoid would be the perfect pantsless antidote. Seriously, Warner Brothers, what are you waiting for? The internet is a million times weirder now than it was in the 90s. Freakazoid would have so much material he'd need a supercomputer just to process all the ways he could mock it. Give us more running gags that make no sense. Give us more villains whose evil plans are derailed by a sudden craving for oatmeal. Give us more Freakazoid or he'll run around in his underwear. Oh wait, he already does that. Never mind, just bring him back. Poo gas. Alright, true believers or whatever the non-copyright infringing version of that is. Our next candidate for resurrection is a hero so mighty, so azure, so utterly oblivious, he makes other superheroes look, well, competent. I speak of course of the nigh invulnerable, overly loquacious champion of the city, SPOOON! This show wasn't just ahead of its time, it was living in a completely different, more hilarious dimension where superhero tropes went to be lovingly dissected and then reassembled into something gloriously absurd. The Tick himself, a mountain of blue muscle with the mind of an enthusiastic, slightly concussed puppy, was a parody goldmine. His bombastic speeches about justice, evil, and the proper application of cutlery were legendary. He'd leap into battle with a cry of "Spoon!" or some other equally baffling non sequitur, completely unaware of the collateral damage or the sheer ridiculousness of his pronouncements. And yet, you couldn't help but love the big blue lug. He was pure, unadulterated heroism, filtered through a lens of glorious, well-meaning idiocy. And his sidekick, Arthur, the timid accountant in a moth suit that everyone mistook for a bunny. He was the perfect foil, the voice of reason that the Tick usually ignored in favor of punching something or delivering a monologue about the cold, clammy hand of evil. Or perhaps it's just a poorly insulated glove. Their dynamic was comedy perfection. Arthur constantly trying to inject logic and strategy, while the Tick was busy trying to figure out if his antennae were picking up radio stations from Neptune. It was a beautiful partnership of chaos and anxiety. The villains were just as brilliantly conceived. Chairface Chippendale, a guy with a chair for a head, whose grand evil scheme was to carve his name into the moon. That's commitment to a bit, people. Then there was the evil midnight bomber what bombs at midnight, and only at midnight, mind you, he was very specific, or LC, the militant talking plant. Each villain was a walking, talking punchline, perfectly designed to highlight the absurdity of the superhero genre, while still being genuinely funny, and occasionally a tiny bit threatening in their sheer weirdness. This show understood satire on a level that most live-action superhero parodies today can only dream of. It wasn't mean-spirited, it was a loving homage that also happened to be gut-bustingly funny. It pointed out the inherent silliness of capes and cowls, secret identities and over-the-top evil lairs, all while delivering genuinely entertaining superhero action. The animation style was clean and expressive, perfectly capturing the comic book origins, and the voice acting was simply superb, especially Townsend Coleman as the Tick. So why bring it back? Because the superhero genre has only gotten bigger, and dare I say, more self-important. We the Tick to swoop in and remind everyone not to take themselves so seriously. Imagine the Tick trying to understand the multiverse or attending a superhero team-up press conference. The comedic possibilities are endless. We need his battle cries, his philosophical musings on the nature of lint, his unwavering belief that destiny is a fickle strumpet easily swayed by a bit of daring do. Come on, Fox Kids, or whoever owns the rights now. The world is drowning in grimdark superheroes and convoluted cinematic universes. We need a hero who fights for truth, justice, and the right to a really good catchphrase. We need more Spoon. Not a remake, not a reimagining, just more of that brilliant blue, bombastic bastion of buffoonery. The city needs him. Need him. Alright, quack commandos and terror flappers. Prepare to flap your wings in righteous indignation because our next entry is a feathered friend of the night who was often overshadowed but never out-awesomed. I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the show that deserves a revival. I am Darkwing Duck. When there's trouble, you call DW. This show was pure, unadulterated fun, a perfect blend of superhero action, slapstick comedy, and genuinely charming characters. Darkwing, aka Drake Mallard, was the epitome of the egotistical yet ultimately good-hearted hero. He craved the spotlight, he had an ego the size of Saint Canard, and his plans often went hilariously awry. But when push came to shove, he always did the right thing, even if it meant sharing the credit, which pained him greatly. His dramatic entrances, his over-the-top pronouncements, "suck gas, evildoer," and his arsenal of completely impractical gadgets made him an instant icon. He was Batman, if Batman was a duck with a flair for the dramatic and a tendency to trip over his own cape. And who could forget his amazing supporting cast? Launchpad McQuack, his loyal, dim-witted, but surprisingly competent, sometimes sidekick pilot, imported straight from DuckTales and fitting in perfectly. Gosselin Mallard, his adopted daughter, a feisty, adventurous spitfire who often got into more trouble than Darkwing himself, but also frequently saved the day with her quick thinking. And let's not forget Honker Muddlefoot, the nerdy kid next door who often provided the brains to Darkwing's, well, Darkwingness. Their family dynamic was surprisingly heartwarming amidst all the chaos. The Rogues Gallery was a masterpiece of pun-tastic villainy. Negaduck, Darkwing's evil doppelganger from the Negaverse, who was everything Darkwing was, but actually competent and genuinely menacing, and somehow even funnier for it. Megavolt, who could control electricity and had a bizarre obsession with light bulbs. Bushroot, the plant-duck hybrid scientist. Quackerjack, the insane toy maker. Each villain was memorable, distinct, and provided the perfect comedic foil for Darkwing's heroic antics. The Fearsome Five, come on! This show was a brilliant parody of superhero tropes, particularly Batman and the Shadow, but it also stood on its own as a fantastic action comedy. The writing was sharp, the gags were plentiful, and the action sequences were surprisingly dynamic for an afternoon cartoon. It had heart, it had humor, and it had a duck in a cool hat and cape. What more could you possibly want? And yet it feels like it never quite got the long run or the widespread recognition it truly deserved compared to some of its Disney afternoon brethren. Why bring it back? Because, "let's get dangerous" is a catchphrase that should echo through the ages. We need more adventures with the masked Mallard. Imagine him trying to navigate the modern world of social media influencers and viral villains. The potential for comedic disaster is astronomical. Plus, Gosselin would be a teenager now. Think of the father-daughter crime-fighting angst. It writes itself. Disney, you brought back DuckTales, and did a great job, I'll admit. Now it's time for the other feathered dynamo of Duckburg. I mean St. Canard to get his due. Seriously, the demand is there. The fans remember. We want more gas gun action, more launchpad crashes, more of Gosselin outsmarting the adults, and more of Darkwing Duck making a grand entrance only to immediately trip and fall. It's the kind of comfort food animation that is sorely missed. Don't let the terror that flaps in the night remain grounded. Let him soar once more for justice, for St. Canard, for slightly singed tail feathers. Hello, nurse! And everybody else watching. Get ready to unleash your inner zany because our next pick is a show that wasn't just a cartoon, it was a variety show, a history lesson, a musical extravaganza, and a masterclass in comedic timing, all wrapped up in one chaotic package. I'm talking, of course, about Animaniacs, totally insane-y. This show was a whirlwind of wit, slapstick, and songs that would get stuck in your head for weeks, whether you wanted them to or not. And let's be honest, you usually wanted them to. Yakko, Wacko, and Dot Warner, the Warner brothers, and the Warner sister Dot, were unleashed upon the Warner Brothers studio lot, and frankly, the world was never the same. Their brand of humor was sophisticated yet silly, capable of delighting kids with pratfalls and adults with clever wordplay and sly innuendo that flew right over the little ones' heads. They were agents of chaos, gleefully tormenting anyone who crossed their path, from studio executives to historical figures, and they did it all with a song in their hearts and a mallet behind their backs. But Animaniacs wasn't just about the Warners. It was an ensemble show overflowing with memorable segments. Pinky and the Brain, Narf, two genetically engineered lab mice, one a genius bent on world domination, the other, well, he was Pinky. Their nightly attempts to take over the world were exercises in brilliant absurdity and surprisingly quotable dialogue. Are you pondering what I'm pondering, Pinky? I think so, Brain. But where are we going to find rubber pants our size? Pure gold. Then there was Slappy Squirrel, the grumpy retired cartoon star who dealt with modern annoyances with a stick of dynamite and a sarcastic quip. Goodfeathers, the pigeon parody of Goodfellas. Rita and Runt, the singing cat and dog duo whose segments always managed to tug at your heartstrings before Runt said something dumb. Buttons and Mindy, Chicken Boo! The sheer variety was astounding, ensuring there was something for everyone, even if that something was a giant chicken trying to pass as a human. Don't judge. The musical numbers were a huge part of the show's charm. From Yakko's World, good luck getting that out of your head now, to Wacko's America, and the countless parodies and original songs, the music was clever, catchy, and often surprisingly educational. This show taught a generation of kids the names of countries and states better than any geography class ever could, all while making them laugh. That's the power of a well-written, slightly unhinged musical number, people. Now I know what you're thinking, but retrography, Animaniacs did get a reboot. And yes, it did, and it's pretty darn good. But I'm talking about the original magic, the specific 90s zeitgeist it captured. And more importantly, some of those amazing supporting segments that didn't make it to the reboot in full force. We need more Slappy. We need more Goodfeathers. The world is arguably crazier now. Imagine the field day Yakko, Wacko, and Dot would have with today's pop culture and politics. The original run, for its time, felt like it ended too soon, leaving us wanting more of that specific blend. The original Animaniacs was a landmark in animation, a testament to the genius of people like Tom Regger and Steven Spielberg, who understood that kids' entertainment didn't have to mean dumbed-down entertainment. It was smart, it was hilarious, and it was unapologetically itself. While the reboot carries the torch, the sheer volume and variety of the original's short segments still feel like an untapped well for a true, full-cast revival. Bring back the wheel of morality. Moral number 1, you should always bring back Animaniacs in its full chaotic glory. Warning! Incoming game! Our next entry on this crusade for cartoon comebacks is a show that wasn't just set in a computer, it was the computer, rendered in glorious, groundbreaking, and at the time, mind-blowingly futuristic CGI. I'm talking about ReBoot. This Canadian marvel took us inside the digital city of Mainframe, where sprites, binomes, and viruses lived, worked, and battled for survival against the whims of the user and the threats from the web. Alphanumeric, Bob, the Guardian, Key Tool, Enzo Matrix, the plucky young sprite who just wanted to be a hero, Dot Matrix, Enzo's resourceful older sister running the principal office, and Fong, the wise old sage. These were our guides through a world that was constantly under threat, and the threats were awesome. Megabyte, the suave, sophisticated virus with a voice like Liquid Evil, thank you Tony J, and Hexadecimal, the chaotic, artistic virus with a flair for the dramatic, and a face that was literally a mask of ever-changing expressions. These weren't just villains, they were forces of digital nature. The central conceit of user games dropping into Mainframe was brilliant. Suddenly our heroes would be forced to reboot into game characters, fighting for their lives in scenarios dictated by an unseen player. If they lost, They were nullified, turned into those slug-like creatures, a fate worse than deletion for many. This added a real sense of stakes to every GameCube descent. You felt the tension, the desperation, and the triumphant joy when they managed to win against often ridiculous odds. And the evolution of the show. Oh my glitch, the evolution. It started off relatively lighthearted, episodic even. But as it progressed, particularly in Season 3, it became darker, more serialized, and incredibly ambitious. Enzo, lost in the game, growing up into the grim, cynical hero Matrix. Andrea, his game sprite companion. The threat of the web, Demon, the supervirus storyline. It was epic, genuinely epic, with character development that put many live-action shows to shame. That cliffhanger at the end of My Two Bobs still haunts me. What made ReBoot so special, beyond its then revolutionary animation, which yes looks dated now but was jaw-dropping at the time, was its world-building and its heart. Mainframe felt like a real place with its own culture, its own slang, stay frosty, its own rules. You cared about these characters, these collections of polygons and code, because they felt real. Their triumphs were your triumphs, their losses, your losses. And who could forget Glitch, Bob's versatile key tool, the Swiss Army knife of the digital world? Why bring it back? Because the story isn't finished. The Guardian Code, let's just say it wasn't what fans were hoping for. We need a true continuation, a Season 5 that picks up where the original left off, or at least respects the canon and characters. The digital world has only become more complex, more integrated into our lives. Imagine the stories ReBoot could tell now, exploring concepts like AI, virtual reality, the metaverse, the real one, not Zuck's legless nightmare. The potential is limitless for a show that was always about adapting and evolving. The original creators have expressed interest. The fan base is still passionate after all these years. This isn't just nostalgia. It's a desire to see a genuinely compelling story reach its proper conclusion. Mainframe deserves to be fully restored, its heroes celebrated, its villains. Well, maybe Megabyte can get a redemption arc. Who knows? The point is the system is down and we need ReBoot to bring it back online. For Bob, for Dot, for Enzo, for the love of all that is alphanumeric. Wash your hands, folks, because things are about to get weird, satirical, and just a little bit off. Our next cartoon champion clawing its way out of the forgotten 90s bin is none other than this show, man. This show was like a fever dream designed by a disgruntled office worker who'd had way too much coffee and decided to expose the absurdities of adult life through the eyes of a neurotic wallaby. And it was glorious. Rocko, the titular immigrant wallaby, just trying to make his way in the baffling, bureaucratic, and often disgusting city of O-Town. He was surrounded by a cast of characters who were equal parts lovable and deeply, deeply strange. Heifer Wolf, his best friend, a steer raised by wolves who had an insatiable appetite and a childlike naivete. Filbert Turtle, the nebbishy hypochondriac turtle prone to bouts of nausea and existential dread. And Spunky, Rocko's loyal, none-too-bright dog who seemed to eat mostly garbage and couch cushions. The genius of was its thinly veiled social satire. It tackled issues like corporate greed, conglom-o anyone, consumerism, the horrors of the DMV, terrible jobs, bad neighbors, looking at you, Ed Bighead, and the general anxieties of modern existence. All this, mind you, in a kid's cartoon. The subtlety was often, well, not that subtle, but that was part of the charm. It was winking at the adults in the room while still providing plenty of slapstick and gross-out humor for the kids. Laundry Day is a very dangerous day. Truer words were never spoken. The animation style was unique, quirky, a little bit grotesque, with a color palette that often felt slightly sickly, perfectly matching the off-kilter tone of the show. The character designs were memorable and expressive, and the world felt lived in, if a bit grimy. And the humor. Oh, the humor. It was full of double entendres, sight gags, and moments that made you go, wait, did they really just get away with that on Nickelodeon? Yes, they did. Repeatedly. Remember Choky Chicken? Or the entire episode about Filbert's impending fatherhood? Wild. Now, some might say, but retrography happened. And yes, the Netflix special was a wonderful, surprisingly poignant return, but it was just that, a special. It left us wanting more of that classic vibe, more explorations of how these characters would navigate the even modern life of today. The special proved there's still so much comedic and satirical gold to mine with these characters. It wasn't a full series revival, and that's what this wallaby and his bizarre friends truly deserve after being somewhat overshadowed by the Nicktoon titans like, or, though Rocko was arguably more consistent than late-run Ren and Stimpy, Fight Me. Why a full comeback? Because the world has only gotten weirder and Rocko's bewildered reactions are timeless. Imagine Rocko trying to understand NFTs, or Heifer becoming a TikTok influencer, or Filbert getting sucked into QAnon forums. The scenarios write themselves. Joe Murray's unique brand of surreal, satirical humor is needed now more than ever to help us laugh at the sheer lunacy of being alive. It connected because deep down, we all feel a bit like Rocko sometimes, overwhelmed, confused, but still trying our best. So, Nickelodeon, Paramount Plus, whoever holds the leash on Spunky these days, unleash the wallaby. Let him and his friends run amok in our 21st century dystopia. I mean, society! We need more episodes that make us laugh until we feel slightly uncomfortable, more observations that are painfully true, and more reminders that no matter how bad things get, at least we're not Mr. Bighead, probably. Turn the page, wash your hands, and give us more. Alright, prepare to question your reality, your morals, and possibly your sanity, because our next entry comes from the deepest, darkest, most stylishly dystopian corner of MTV's liquid television. I'm talking about Peter Chung's. This wasn't your Saturday morning fare, kids. This was animation as high art, as philosophical treatise, as a series of incredibly cool and often deeply unsettling images, set to an industrial soundtrack. And it was, in a word, unforgettable. Even if you didn't always understand what the hell was going on. Aeon Flux herself, secret agent, assassin, anarchist, saboteur, lover, and frequent corpse. Yes, she died. A lot. Often in gruesome and inventive ways, only to be back in the next episode, no explanation given, ready to embark on another bizarre mission in the oppressive twin cities of Bregna and Monica. She was all impossibly long limbs, skin-tight outfits, and a silent, deadly grace. She was less a character and more an icon, a symbol of rebellion in a world gone mad. And Trevor Goodchild, her nemesis, lover, and intellectual sparring partner, a charismatic dictator, a brilliant scientist, a manipulative bastard. Their relationship was complicated. The plot, if you could even call it that in the traditional sense, was often secondary to the mood, the atmosphere, and the sheer visual audacity. Each episode was a self-contained nightmare, a glimpse into a future that was both alluring and terrifying. It explored themes of surveillance, genetic engineering, totalitarianism, free will, sexuality, and the very nature of identity. It didn't spoon-feed you answers, it presented you with questions, wrapped in a package of breathtakingly fluid and stylized animation that was unlike anything else on television. The animation style was the star. Peter Chung's distinctive designs, with their elongated figures, sharp angles, and fetishistic attention to detail, were instantly recognizable. The movements were balletic, almost inhumanly graceful, punctuated by moments of shocking violence or unsettling intimacy. It was like watching a moving Egon Schiele painting, if Egon Schiele had been really into sci-fi and leather. The sound design too was crucial, full of strange clicks, whispers, and atmospheric drones that amplified the feeling of unease and alienation. This show was challenging, it demanded your attention. It didn't care if you were comfortable. It was art house animation broadcast to a generation raised on G.I. Joe, and it blew minds. It was the kind of show that sparked conversations, arguments, and probably a few existential crises. It wasn't for everyone, and that was precisely its strength. It dared to be different, to be adult, to be in a way that few mainstream animated shows have dared to be since, especially in the West. Why bring it back? Because, frankly, animation needs another shot of this kind of daring. In an era of often safe, committee-driven entertainment, would be a bracing slap in the face. Imagine what Peter Chung could do with modern animation tools, exploring contemporary anxieties about technology, transhumanism, and societal control. The world of Bregna and Monica feels disturbingly relevant today. We need that uncompromising vision, that willingness to push boundaries and make audiences, even if it makes them uncomfortable. A new wouldn't be about nostalgia, it would be about reigniting a certain kind of artistic fire in animation. It would be a statement, it would be dangerous, it would be beautiful and horrifying, and it would undoubtedly feature Aeon dying in some spectacular new way, only to return, enigmatic as ever. MTV, Paramount Plus, whoever has the rights to this particular brand of gorgeous dystopia, the world is ready to be confused and amazed all over again. Unleash the Flux. Alright Planeteers, prepare to summon your elemental rings and your righteous indignation, because our next show aimed to save the world, one poorly aged catchphrase at a time. It's Go Planet! Now, before you start groaning, hear me out. Yes, it was cheesy. Yes, the villains were often one-dimensional caricatures of corporate greed and pollution. And yes, the power is yours became an ironic meme, but damn it, its heart was in the right place. The premise was simple. Gaia, the spirit of the Earth, voiced by Whoopi Goldberg no less, assembles a team of 5 teenagers from around the globe, each wielding a magic ring controlling an element. Earth, fire, wind, water, and heart. Yeah, Mati's heart ring always got the short end of the stick, didn't it? What's your power? I can make animals like me and sense feelings. Meanwhile, Kwame's over here causing earthquakes. When their powers combined, they summoned Captain Planet, a blue-skinned, green-mulleted superhero who fought eco-villains with puns and environmental solutions. The eco-villains were a rogues gallery of unsubtle allegories. Hoggish Greedly, the pig-like embodiment of unchecked capitalism. Dr. Blight, the mad scientist with a scarred face representing unethical science. Loot and Plunder, the poacher and illegal logger. Duke Nukem, no, not Duke Nukem, the radioactive one. Verminous Scum, the rat man spreading disease and filth. They were over the top, sure, but they represented real-world problems in a way that kids could understand, even if the execution was sometimes clunky. Despite its flaws, and there were many, the often stilted animation, the repetitive plots, the aforementioned lameness of the heart ring, was genuinely trying to do something good. It was one of the first mainstream cartoons to tackle environmental issues head-on, educating kids about pollution, deforestation, endangered species, and recycling. It encouraged activism and awareness, and for a generation of kids it was their first introduction to these important concepts. It sparked conversations, and that's not nothing. And let's be honest, there was a certain charm to its earnestness. Captain Planet himself, with his well-meaning but often cringe-worthy eco-puns, time to take you down to size, polluters, was a product of his time. The show genuinely believed in the power of young people to make a difference, and that message, however clumsily delivered, is still valuable. Plus, who didn't secretly want one of those rings, even if it was just to set fire to your homework? Don't do that, kids, or do, I'm not your dad. So why on earth, pun intended, bring back? Because the environmental crisis is, more pressing now than it was in the 90s. We need a show that tackles these issues for a new generation, but with better writing, more nuanced characters, and villains who aren't just strawmen. Imagine a modern that deals with climate change, plastic pollution, sustainable energy, and social justice with the sophistication that today's animation can achieve. Give Mati some actual useful powers, for crying out loud. The core concept, young people from diverse backgrounds uniting to save the planet, is more relevant than ever. It could be dark, it could be hopeful, it could even be a little satirical about its own origins. But the potential for a truly impactful, entertaining, and environmental action show is there. Don't let the power just be. Let it be ours to demand a better, smarter, and more powerful Captain Planet for the 21st century. The planet needs it more than ever. Alright everyone, we've reached the end of our nostalgic journey, and for our grand finale we're diving headfirst into a pile of gold coins with a show that defined adventure for a generation. It's the one, the only, the original. Woo-oo! This wasn't just a cartoon, it was an invitation to explore, to discover, to solve mysteries and rewrite history. It was pure, unadulterated joy, adventure, and family, all wrapped up in a ridiculously catchy theme song that you're probably humming right now. You're welcome. Scrooge McDuck, the richest duck in the world, and arguably the most adventurous. He wasn't just a greedy old miser, though he was definitely thrifty. He was a swashbuckling explorer, a cunning strategist, and a surprisingly caring uncle. He dragged his 3 grandnephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, on globe-trotting adventures to find lost treasures, ancient artifacts, and mythical creatures. And they weren't just bratty kids, they were resourceful, brave, and essential members of the team, each with their own burgeoning personality. The supporting cast was legendary. Launchpad McQuack, the lovable, crash-prone pilot who somehow always managed to get them where they needed to go, eventually. Mrs. Beakley, the no-nonsense nanny, and her adorable granddaughter Webby Vanderquack, who was more adventurous than all the boys combined. Gyro Gearloose, the eccentric inventor whose creations often caused as many problems as they solved. And who could forget Duckworth, Scrooge's unflappable butler? This ensemble cast felt like a real, if somewhat dysfunctional family. And the villains, oh the villains were iconic. The Beagle Boys perpetually trying and failing to break into Scrooge's money bin. Magica Dispel, the sorceress obsessed with stealing Scrooge's #1 dime. Flintheart Glomgold, Scrooge's equally wealthy and even more ruthless rival, constantly trying to out-Scrooge Scrooge. These weren't just generic bad guys, they had personality, they had history with Scrooge, and their schemes were often hilariously elaborate. Now I hear you, retrography, there's a reboot, and it's amazing. And you are absolutely 100% correct. The 2017 is a masterpiece, a shining example of how to do a reboot right, honoring the original while forging its own path. But this list is about 90s cartoons that deserve a comeback. And while the of DuckTales is alive and well, the series, with its specific charm, its animation style, its episodic adventure of the week format, sometimes feels like a cherished memory rather than something people are actively clamoring to see of in its original form. Its influence is there, but the original itself? It deserves its own spotlight again. Why specifically highlight the original for a comeback thought, even with the reboot's success? Because the original laid the groundwork. It proved that Disney could do high-quality, serialized, to a degree, adventure stories on television. It paved the way for the entire Disney afternoon. And there's a certain magic to that original run, a nostalgic comfort that the excellent reboot, by virtue of being modern and different, can't quite replicate. Perhaps a lost episode season or a movie in the original style bridging a gap. The original theme song alone is a cultural touchstone that deserves to be blasted at full volume. The original was more than just a cartoon, it was an experience. It taught us about history, mythology, and the importance of family and perseverance, all while being incredibly entertaining. It sparked imaginations and made us all wish we had a rich uncle who would take us on adventures and maybe let us swim in his money bin just once. So while we adore the new adventures, let's not forget the trailblazing original. It's a classic for a reason, and its adventurous spirit is something the world could always use more of. Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg, and we wouldn't have it any other way. And there you have it, folks. 10 treasures from the 90s animation crypt, desperately clawing their way out and begging for a second chance at life. Phew, I think I need to lie down in a dark room with a cool compress and a marathon of 90s commercials to recover from that nostalgia overload. From gothic guardians to cybernetic sprites, from egotistical ducks to neurotic wallabies, these shows weren't just time fillers, they were formative, they were daring, and darn it, they were fun! Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Seriously, click that like button like you're trying to save mainframe from a user game, and subscribe faster than Freakazoid can say poogas. Your support helps me keep digging through these archives of awesomeness, and believe me, there's plenty more where that came from. My VHS collection alone is a national treasure, or a fire hazard depending on your perspective. Which 90s cartoon do you think deserves a comeback? Did your favorite make the list? Did I commit an unforgivable sin by leaving one out? Let us know in the comments below. I want to hear your passionate defenses, your tearful pleas, your angry all-caps demands for justice for that one show about, I don't know, talking staplers that only aired for 3 episodes. See you next time for more nostalgic fun. Stay retro, everyone.